Well, welcome. We have a nice little intimate group here. We weren't sure how this topic was going to go, but some people said that this would be a good thing for families, moms, back to school, things like that. So, and I said, well, that's always a passion of mine because I have a little girl who's 5 and trying to figure out meals, but on a budget, especially healthy meals, is pretty, can be challenging. So we thought we would put this together. Did any of you come to that movie that we aired? I don't think, what was that called again? I'm blanking on it now. We just aired it and it was about, Food Stamped, it was what it was called. And that was pretty interesting to watch because it was showing you how there's all different amounts of money that you're allowed per month depending on how many people are in your family. So this couple were trying to do $50 a week, eating very, very healthy, but she had to put a lot of time and effort into figuring out her entire menu. They use a lot of beans and they had their fruits and vegetables, but they had to ration everything. And when it came out at the end, they said that she did a great job because she knew a lot about nutrition too. Her job was dealing with nutrition. But they were under calories, so they would have continued to lose weight because they just couldn't sustain what they needed on that. So it was interesting how the different perspectives and spin. So with this, I'm going to go over a few different things, and in the end, we're having Deborah, who is the cafe supervisor and catering supervisor of the Tyme-Out Café. And what we did was she put together a sample of what would be a nutritious breakfast, snack, lunch, and dinner. So she's going to have samples of them brought in after the presentation. So don't take off if you want to try some stuff. So, and also the way I run this is I like you to ask questions throughout if you have questions, not to hold them to the end, because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I would forget and then have to say, could you go back to that slide? And something that people had mentioned too was they always are struggling to try to get the websites written down, so that's why I handed these out to you guys to have those. And I have some other things that I'll mention at the end as well. So, and I should have said, I'm Laurel Sterling, the registered dietitian here. Is anybody new? Anybody new? Okay, so you guys have been here and you're familiar with the whole layout. I know that you're not new. I do the consulting here. I have a one-on-one free service at the store, and also, I do the lectures here and also in the community representing Natur-Tyme. So my cards are back there if anybody's interested or wants to email, call, or come in to see me for any reason. So, okay, so I'm going to get started. So are you confused by it all? I know it's really difficult because when I started looking at, for myself, I was doing more gluten-free, but I also do organic. So when I started crossing into more of the gluten-free products that weren't just, say, buying amaranth or quinoa, getting something like Van's waffles, they weren't listed on there. I don't think they are listed as organic. So they'll use corns, and so corn is the top genetically modified crop out there. So it's difficult when you're trying to get everything under one umbrella, so to speak, as well as then you want to be economical too. So that's what hopefully I'm here to help you get through. So don't you want to feel good every day and take care of your family the best that you can and have all the energy to do the things that you want all day long for yourself, your kids, grandkids, whomever? I think everybody does. So how do we start going about it? So do we need to be concerned with organic, gluten-free, genetically modified? Does everybody know what GMOs are? Because I'll be going over that a little bit too. So how do we decide who to listen to? There's studies out there, things thrown out there all the time, and I know I'm getting them across my desk a lot, and I have to sit there and discern who's funding the study, where is this information coming from, how valid is it? And a lot of the lay people don't really know that until look into that. So they'll just see the study and say, oh my gosh, we can't have this, or this isn't good anymore. We need to go more towards this. So it's pretty difficult unless you're in this field, so to speak. So how can we all do this also on a budget? Well, some simple ways to start just by starting your own garden. Or even if you don't want to do a garden, I know my whole thing this year was to start a garden. Do you think I started a garden? And I wanted to have chickens too, and I didn't have chickens this year. But my brother and his friend, my brother's a farmer, and they started, they got chickens and they started selling around the community. So I thought, all right, well, I don't have to deal with that. And my uncle has a garden, and my brother started a garden this year, and so we started sharing. So we would drop off different ones. So that was pretty nice. I mean, I didn't add to it, but I helped by buying the products. So next year is my goal to start that, because I did help my dad with his garlic, but that's all we did this year was the garlic. And you can even do small things like what my mom had said, which is really simple, is you can start things in pots, and you can do things indoors as well. Even now, you can start things like lettuce, which will continuously come up. You can have things inside, and you can have those raised beds, which I had a girlfriend that started that this year, and she had so many things come out of that raised bed. They just packed it full of stuff.
In your house?
That wouldn't be in the house. That's outside. But that's just a small, 4x6 area that you could have as a raised bed with, the wood on the outside. Some of them actually have where you can buy these, they look like, big grocery bags, the plastic ones that you can have outside, and you can move them around, and you would put the dirt in there and grow them in those. So there's a lot of different things you can do. You don't have to get so overwhelmed, and I think that's what happened with me is I thought, oh geez, I gotta sit down and figure out where, what, how. I don't have time to pick everything and the weeding, because I grew up with a garden that was the size of 2 times of this room, and we were always out there weeding. It was just, so I think about that, and I'm overwhelmed, and I don't want that, so I haven't started it yet. So you gotta, pick it, bring it down a notch, and make it smaller, more feasible. You can also get involved and support local, organic, free-range foods as much as possible. Like you can get involved with farmers markets or the CSAs, community-supported agriculture, where you can go in and they have places where you can go. Some people have where they would, through word of mouth, they know, okay, I'm going to buy half of a cow, do you want the other half? And then they will invest in that. There's a website called, I'm not sure if I did, eatwild.org. You can go to that, you click on New York State, and then within New York State, all over New York, it will list farms, and the farms will list in there what they actually grow and have on their farm. So you can find things locally around and do such things. Also, a very local in Pulaski is the Grindstone Farms. Is anybody familiar with that?
Yeah.
Yep. So they come here a lot, and you can also order those online as well. And you can make custom boxes that you would like, or get the standard ones, and they can send recipes along with that. They can deliver it to your house if you're in an area they'll deliver to. So there's a lot of different ways that you can slowly start out. Reading labels too, that's a big thing. I was going to put a whole comparison, but I couldn't find one to put on there as far as for label reading. A lot of people don't understand really what the labels are. I'm sure most of you do, because you probably read them probably like I do religiously. I'm just looking through the whole profile, and then you can't just look at the upper part, which is mostly this. It just tells the nutrition facts. You also have to look down below where it has the ingredients. So a lot of people don't realize, say for instance, if is this thing on here? Oops. Last year. How do I do the pointer?
The middle button.
The middle button?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So right here, usually underneath fat, they would list underneath saturated, monounsaturated, poly, and then also trans fats. So if you were looking at a label, say for instance, okay, I didn't put it on that one, but down below where it would have the ingredients in there, you would have to read to see if there are any hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated fats. Because up here it could say 0 trans fats, but down below it would have those listed in there, and that means that it still has trans fats in there. But the labeling, according to what they've passed for the laws for the trans fats, if it's 0.5 grams or less, they can actually put it as 0. But every 0.5 adds up. And a lot of people don't realize when they're looking at servings, they say, okay, well, this is 1 packet. So say this says 1, but servings per container is 4. So if it's like a Fig Newton that you have 4 in a pack, that might be 4 servings or 2 servings, and people don't realize that all this here you have to multiply by 4. A lot of people don't realize that. And what is it based on? It's based on a 2,000 calorie diet, which most of women, it's usually 1,400, so that's way over. So I just kind of skim things and I look at the whole thing and see, is this a good food? Is this not really? For instance, like when you're looking at a Pop-Tart, okay? It's got a lot of sugars in there and really not a lot of fiber. So you have to really be a detective in looking at the entire label. And you can go online and there are sites that you can look at and say, what does this mean? And read further on that.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
You have to really look at calories from fat too, right? Isn't that something you're supposed to be, like I can see it's kind of blurry on the...
On this other one over here.
Yeah. You have to really look at that
Calories
too,
from
right? Because you want to keep that lower, right? You don't want a lot of calories from fat.
See, I don't look at that one, actually, because
Okay.
I typically, most people that I see, as far as when I'm dealing with weight issues, it's typically carbohydrates and sugars.
Oh, okay.
The fat aspect of it, if you're eating a lot of fast foods, yes, there's probably going to be a lot of fat, a lot of salt, a lot of sugar. But when you're I don't typically look at that. Usually what I look at is, okay, what's the calorie? Okay, so the calorie is like 130. How much protein? Well, this has got 14 grams. I'm thinking of a Chobani yogurt. Okay, so it's got 14 grams of protein, and then as far as the carbs, it might be 20 grams, and it should have a little bit of fat. That's actually a good all-around food. But if you see it where the fiber is nil, and the protein is 2 and the carbs are 50, and unless you're in a marathon running, we really typically wouldn't want that kind of a food. So you have to look at the balance of it, the whole balance of the entire product. And then you have to also look at the balance of the day of what you're eating too. So there's a lot that does go into that. So typically, and I'm sure you're familiar with these, you want to avoid hydrogenated, I spoke about those, the trans fats. They're chemically altered, refined oils, and the rancid oils create oxidation in the body, which create more disease. It's like rusting of your cells, pretty much. They make them hard and crusty, and so the cells are all made of a fat membrane and protein, and so if it's hard and crusty, those nutrients can't flow in and out of the cell appropriately. Artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, preservatives, genetically modified, hormones in meat and dairy, limiting white, refined, and flour products. So, this is just a little bit about McDonald's hamburgers. I'm sure you've probably read some of this information. There's a video, and I've seen pictures on YouTube where they didn't decompose. He had one from 1989, and he continued to keep them every year, and they weren't decomposing, nor were they molding, which is pretty gross.
So you recommend those for our bomb shelter?
Right,
Yes.
that's exactly,
Yeah.
right. So many processed foods don't decompose and won't even be eaten by molds, insects, or rodents. Try leaving a margarine outside and see if anything actually ends up eating it. I mean, mice don't even go after sugary foods. They know that that's not, I mean, you can leave a piece of cake out there, they probably wouldn't eat it, or candy, because they know that's not a good food. Now, if it was a piece of, dairy or cheese or something else, they probably would. But with the meals, salt is a great preservative, and the meat patties at McDonald's are loaded with sodium and other chemicals to preserve it, pretty much. So it's preserving your insides. So this is what the ingredients list would look like, okay, of the bun only. So enriched flour, so it's bleached white flour. So you keep reading, you've got some good stuff there with some water, high fructose corn syrup, another sugar, soybean oil, partially hydrogenated soybean oil, 2% or less, so you've got salt, more wheat gluten, all these are all preservatives, datum preservatives. I mean, do you even know what all these things are here? No. Preservatives, pretty much. So, GMOs, genetically modified food, involves splicing of the different genes into the DNA of the foods or crops or animals. They can be engineered with genes from bacteria, viruses, insects, animals, or even humans. So you've heard of different tomatoes that were spliced with fish genes, so they would stay on the shelves and look nice and fresh and wouldn't decompose quickly. So what if someone had a fish allergy? I mean, that kind of throws that whole thing into play, which you may not even know about. And this is like the corn too, which is the Roundup Ready corn. I just had this conversation with my brother. I asked them what they were giving their chickens, because I said, well, because you could technically say that they're organic eggs. And he said, well, they're just eating the grass. And I said, well, that's great. And then I found out, well, he was giving them to supplement with it a feed. And he said, well, it's got some corn and soy. And I said, so is it non-GMO? And he said, I don't know. And I said, okay, well, that people are going to want to know, because what they're being fed gets incorporated into their DNA, into the egg, then into you. So it doesn't just disappear. It kind of goes down the line. According to the USDA, this was in 2009, 93% of soy, 93% of cotton, 86% of corn grown in the US were GMO. And this is just the way that it's going now. It's trending. It's hard pressed for anybody to find something that's not GMO. It's estimated that over 90% of canola grown is GMO. In 30 other countries around the world, including Australia, Japan, and all the countries in the European Union, there are significant restrictions or outright bans, actually. They are banning it on the production of GMOs because they're not considered proven safe yet. It's like flourishing and rampant all over the United States. So there is the website, I think I put it on there, yep, nongmoproject.org. You can go to that website. They give their 4 tips for avoiding GMO crops. Buying organic, because underneath the organic, the USDA seal, the green and white seal, you can't have GMO underneath that, within that. They won't allow it. So buying organic. Look for the non-GMO label, which looks like a little grass field with something else around it and a check mark, and it says non-GMO project verified on there. You'll see them on labels now. Avoiding the at-risk ingredients like corn, soy, canola, cottonseed, sugar beets also, and alfalfa, they're all GMO now. And you can also look at their list. They have a shopping guide that you could print off, and that's the different products that they've listed and companies that they've said are GMO verified or non-GMO verified. This, I don't need to go through all these. I just put some things on here. These are some different snack ideas. There's a lot of them out there, again, that I looked through. Lots of other non-GMO items. Fresh fruits and veggies, very few for sale in the U.S. are genetically modified. The non-GMO project, though, stated that small amounts of zucchini, yellow squash, and sweet corn may be genetically modified. So what I did was I went out here and I bought heirloom organic seeds. So that's what I'm going to be planting with, so I know what I'm getting. Also, fish, fowl, and meats have the complication where they are typically raised. This is what I was talking about before, on genetically modified foods. Look for wild or 100% grass-fed on the labels. As for the dairy, you want to look for organic and be sure that they're not given the growth hormone or fed GMO grains, which again, that would be saying it's organic or 100% grass-fed on there.
So when you're talking about most corn being GMO, are you talking about corn that's used as feed?
Mm-hmm.
But
Like,
sweet corn is okay?
It's saying that, actually here they're saying that sweet corn may be.
Okay.
You know, I don't know on that one 100%. I had heard no, and then I had heard yes on that. So
if you're buying organic, you make sure that you don't get it.
right,
You buy organic corn to eat.
right, exactly. Yes.
Talking to farmers at the market, they say yes, they can feed the cattle and everything is grass-fed, but in the wintertime, they're grain-fed.
Mm.
So,
Well, if it's truly organic,
I mean, where do they get the grass in the wintertime?
hay, they're fed hay and other silage that would be non-GMO crops. So,
Most of them say grain-fed,
Yeah.
off-season.
yeah, so you can't be guaranteed, so it's as good as you can get with it. Again, where do you want to kind of slide on your money? Because I know I spend a tremendous amount of money on healthcare products and my foods, because that's what I know is the best thing and where I spend a lot of my money. But there again, I would go to, I'm sure at some point I have the Dirty Dozen, and you're familiar with that, and I would compare and say, okay, do I need to buy this organic now, or can I not? There are certain things I won't give on at all, and other things I will. So it's kind of like you have to, I know I've been to the farmers markets and I've asked them, and I said, well, it's not organic, and I was like, oh yeah, it's on a farm, but it's so easy to just say, well, it's like the guy I was saying down the road, he put farm fresh on his sign, and I said, so are you feeding them grains? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, some people are, if they're really at that point where they want it to be not just local and farm fresh, they want it to be organic as possible, I said, they're really not going to want to have that stuff. So I gave him some movies to watch that will help them. There's one called Fresh that talks all about that, and there's another one called something roulette. I can't think of it right now. I just lent that movie to him. Yes.
Would a true organic farmer only not use grain-fed?
Yeah, they don't.
They don't. So sometimes they don't want to go that extra step as organic.
It takes a lot.
It takes a lot.
Yeah.
But a true
Organic Valley has to be that company. They have to, Organic Valley, they do cheeses and milks and butters, and that's who I usually get for when I get the milk and the butter and cheese sticks for my daughter, things like that, Organic Valley. But you pay the price for it. I mean, they're farm owned and they take care of their farmers, but you have to follow strict criteria. They have to be a certain amount of pasteurization, or pastures, that they have to have. And in the wintertime, they would go to hay.
Do they sell meat?
They do meat as well, I believe, yeah. So this is interesting. This kind of reaffirms the whole craziness about the GMOs in the United States. The Hershey company is expanding its confectionery market to Europe. The company plans to reformulate its Europe-destined products to be genetically modified to be free of those in order to meet the demand and comply with the non-GMO requirements of this company as the UK subsidiary of Walmart that will be Hershey's exclusive retailer in the UK. However, Hershey has no intentions of changing any of its US formulations, all of which have the GM ingredients. It's all about the demand. I mean, some of the I forget where it was when my brother had this up on the fridge where these farmers were protesting, and they were dumping thousands and thousands of tons of their milk out, protesting against something over there. And that's what they do. I mean, they do these extreme things, and then they listen and they change. For some reason over there, here, they're just like, well, we just keep doing it. It's okay. We're getting away with it. So also the General Mills announced they have plans to slightly cut the sugar content in its children's cereals in accordance with the overall pressures on major food producers to fight childhood obesity and its related diseases. However, the company continues to use genetically modified ingredients in its cereal products, as well as corn syrup, artificial flavors, artificial colorings, which are all not good. And it's hard because here's the thing. The farmers, and I know from a little bit from the community growing up within it, is they really are needing the subsidies, right? So they have the government subsidies. They are guaranteed you're going to plant soy, you're going to plant corn. Where is that going to be used? Soy oil, high fructose corn syrup, things like that. So they get that because they can't sustain just on the income that they're getting. So it's this vicious circle. They've got to use the stuff up. And this is what they do, is they find different ways of putting it into the food supply or using it. So the types of sugars used in General Mills foods in the cereals are highly processed. The sugars include white sugar, corn syrup, dextrose, maltodextrin, all which usually come from a GM source of the sugar beets. Most white refined sugar now in the U.S. comes from sugar beets, 95% of which are now genetically modified. And corn syrup, dextrose, and maltodextrin all come from corn, which again, as you saw, 90% of it is genetically modified. So why choose organic? I think I've kind of harped on that enough. 80% of pesticides are carcinogenic. The average American consumes 1 gallon of pesticides annually. This was in 2003. They showed that when a large group of individuals were tested for 200 pesticide residues, 90 different pesticides showed up in humans. And I've actually seen, I think it was last year, 2012, something came out about, they tested the cord blood of newborns and they found 200 chemicals in them. So everything that's in us and then it gets into them, and you can be as pure as you can be, but it's things that you put on your skin or you breathe in or you're exposed to. It's everywhere. So the Dirty Dozen list of foods should be avoided unless they're organic. The Dirty Dozen are high pesticide residue foods, and they were tested after being washed. A lot of people ask me that. Can you wash it off? No, you can't wash it off. It's actually throughout the whole growing process. Eating these foods exposes an individual to 15 pesticides a day. Therefore, all these foods should be consumed only if organic. And this is the latest update. And again, I gave you the website there to go to. It's the ewg.org. That gives you the Dirty Dozen. So apples. I actually had a gentleman in here when we aired the movie Vanishing of the Bees, and he worked for the EPA, and he said the grounds where, you think of apple orchards, like my husband worked at Beacon Skiff and drove the tractor, and it's just like families are going there and picking the apples. It's just so wonderful and beautiful. And after I started learning about this, my daughter would pick them, and I'd say, yeah, and I'd just throw it while she wasn't looking. And I would let her keep one apple out of the whole thing because, you can't be a food Nazi completely, but you've got to enjoy things. But after I learned about apples and how pesticide-laden they were, I said, that is it. I'm not going to. And this gentleman said, yeah, the grounds there around there, he said, they are so tainted. He said it's almost like a toxic waste dump underneath where all the apple orchards are. He said after they don't have the orchard there, he said that ground can't be utilized for anything because it's been so heavily sprayed. And so, it's pretty unfortunate. Celery, peaches, strawberries, blueberries, nectarines, cucumbers, summer squash, sweet bell peppers, spinach, cab collards, cherry tomatoes, potatoes, and imported grapes, because other countries have different standardizations, so you kind of have to be careful with that as well.
Why are we so bad? Like, I would expect that with us being so health conscious that we would be better than most countries, and it seems like we're worse.
Money. A lot of it's money driven, I feel. The government, the way things are, you're supposed to have the FDA and certain watchdogs out there, but when you read about really what's funding and who's backing it and who's covering it, that's what it all comes down to, unfortunately. We should have the best with what we have, but it's just things are kind of covered up and it just continues on, unfortunately. Until we start, demanding more of it and stepping up more, then there's going to be, again, more of the demand of the organics and more natural. Like with, I was actually just talking with DT about this, with the farmers that were actually giving that growth hormone. Some cows, after they give birth, they don't produce a lot of milk. So some farmers would start giving them the hormones to produce more milk. And so that's the bovine growth hormone. They would penalize farmers and charge them more to have to send a separate truck out to get those. If you were on the normal route, they said, okay, if you're going to have this in your milk supply, then you have to be charged X number more for us to come out and send a separate milk truck out. So they were being penalized, which is a good thing. So the demand of more of not having that has really pressed through, I think. That's still out there, but it's going to be a long cycle, I think. The Environmental Working Group research showed that people who eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day from the Dirty Dozen list consume an average of 10 pesticides a day. The Clean 15, eating these foods, can reduce exposure to pesticides by 90% by exposing you to only 2 pesticides a day. So these are things that you would think that naturally have their own, because like garlic and ginger, things like that that have more volatile oils. They are naturally more pest resistant on their own, so you don't have to spray them as much. Some of these other ones with the thicker skins and whatnot. So this again would be on the ewg.org website. Okay, so getting into gluten. Oh wait, I want to say, yeah, off this EWG website too. I'm going to talk a little bit later when I get into some of the menus. There's this good food on a tight budget shopping guide, which I thought was great in there. When you look at their website, they have blocks of different things that you can click on and with pictures associated. And I clicked on that and I just downloaded it. It's called Good Food on a Tight Budget. It's a shopping guide. Okay, so gluten, what is it? It's the common name of a storage protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. It's what makes the breads and pizza super stretchy and doughy. All forms of wheat, barley, and rye. For a celiac, who that's an autoimmune disease where they can't have gluten at all, must be strictly avoided. So why do we have so many issues out there? Well, our lack of genetic adaptation to grasses, particularly gluten. And wheat was introduced in Europe in the Middle Ages. 30% of people of the European descent carry the gene for the celiac disease, which increases the susceptibility to problems from eating gluten. American strains of wheat have a much higher gluten content than those traditionally found in Europe. So a lot of people that have just a gluten sensitivity or intolerance issue find that when they go to Europe, they can actually eat those grains and tolerate them, whereas over here they can't. This super gluten, which is about somewhere between 6 to 9 times more gluten content, was recently introduced into the agricultural food supply and now has affected nearly all the wheat strains. So I think Wheat Belly, that book, which I haven't read, by a doctor, talks a lot about that. And that's why I think a lot of people can't actually tolerate gluten a lot more now. And I actually had that issue for myself, which is why I started going more gluten-free. My digestion, I just don't digest it very well. And growing up, I didn't link it to that until I gave my daughter a little whole wheat pita about 3 years ago, and I hadn't had one in a long time, so I just ate it. It was plain, and then I doubled over with sharp stabbing pains in my stomach, and I thought, oh my gosh, this must be what it was all those years, because as a vegetarian from 12, 13 years old on, what did I eat a lot of? Pastas and breads and cereals, and so I was more of a carbitarian up until I was about 30 when I went back to grad school and started having my beans and nuts and seeds and all that kind of stuff. So I was always growing up with these horrific stomach pains, doubled over. Like if I ate something, I couldn't stand up for a long time. I'd have to sit for hours and wait for things to digest. And so I started really realizing, oh my gosh, I bet you this is what it is. And that was what it was. There's an important review paper. The New England Journal of Medicine listed 55 diseases that can be caused by eating gluten. They include, which a lot of people don't realize, osteoporosis, inflammatory bowel, anemia, cancer, fatigue, canker sores, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, MS, almost all other autoimmune diseases. It's also linked to a lot of psychiatric and neurological diseases like anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, dementia, migraines, epilepsy, neuropathy, and autism, ADD, ADHD too. So, because what you put in your gut is what you get out in your brain, okay? Most of the neurotransmitters are made in your gut. Predominantly, your serotonin, about 95% of it is made in your gut and is used in the brain. So what you're putting through here, that's why in Chinese medicine they consider your gut your second brain. So who can benefit from going gluten-free? Anybody with an autoimmune disease, in the family, even if it's remote and you don't have it. If you have hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's or Graves or type 1 diabetes somewhere in the family, you would think about, especially if it's close around you where you have sisters and brothers and parents that have it. With autism, ADD, ADHD, digestive sensitivities like IBS, irritable bowel or acid reflux, sensitivities or intolerances like migraines, weight issues. Sources of gluten, there's a lot of places where you're going to get it from. These are your typical bread, baked goods, cereals, pastas, but It's also is a thickener in soups, sauces, seasonings, salad dressings. It's in beer, flavored coffees and teas, some candies, chocolates. Again, you don't have to get this strict unless you're a celiac, who has to avoid all forms of it, even if it's minute forms of it. So I don't get that extreme on that, but this is just to let you know where you can find it. So to avoid wheat, this would be these are all different forms of wheat. Avoid barley, again, all different forms of barley here. Rye. Oats is controversial. Some people that are celiac still have problems with oats. It's usually more of a cross-contamination thing. So they do have now plants that have strictly oats that are all gluten-free, and they don't do anything else on the lines that come through their company. Like Bob's Red Mill has that. They have a specific place that's all gluten-free stuff. But again, if you don't have celiac and you don't have to be that strict, you don't have to be this strict. It's just the big offenders that you would find in your pastas, you would find in your cereals, your breads, your snacks. So safe gluten-free flours, cereals, starches, rice, but you have to be careful not to use too much rice. I don't know if you heard about that one, it was last year I think, or a couple years ago. They talked about how they were finding a lot of arsenic in even organic bars for kids that use a lot of rice syrups, or baby foods that use a lot of rice in there that were organic, because rice pulls up a lot of arsenic in the ground just naturally. So they were saying there's more in this than there actually is in your tap water. So actually a celiac client of mine brought that information to me because she was doing rice, everything. And so you've got to vary, just in general, you want to vary up your grains anyway. You want to do things like buckwheat. I have buckwheat pancakes that I make for my daughter and myself. Amaranth. I just bought amaranth, and I just bought millet, and I actually haven't experimented with them yet, but they're very small little grains, and I just need to get some good recipes who I'm waiting for from a friend. But quinoa is something that I eat pretty often. Yes?
Do you know what of those are gluten-free? I know, is it buckwheat? I can't eat,
These are all gluten-free.
they all are?
Yes. Yep. These are all gluten-free. Buckwheat, even though it looks like it wouldn't be, that's a grass. It's not actually a wheat.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So again, experimenting with different ones. Quinoa, they have different pastas out here made from quinoa pasta. Okay, so there's a corn pasta, but is it a organic corn pasta? I don't know. So I typically go towards the quinoa, or I go towards rices, or like I said, I'm experimenting with some of these other grains now. So it's just kind of experimenting with some different things. There's a lot of different mixes out there too. So it's easy enough to start with these. Did you have a question? No. Okay. That's okay. So there's a lot of different mixes. I've used a lot of different ones and tried different ones. Tinkyata rice pasta is the absolute most favorite by everybody that I've talked to. Again, so if you're doing that, you don't want to do rice, and a lot of other products, but that Tinkyata rice pasta is great. The breads, people kind of say hit or miss. Udi's typically is one of the most popular ones for their breads. OHIP is a organic, not organic, but I think it's organic. But it's a local company by two women, and they have some gluten-free products. There's a lot of others too. The nut food, there's a lot of different crackers. These are the waffles I was telling you about. I love the Vans waffles, just as a quick thing to put in. Meals and soups, I use a lot of the Amy's ones just to, like I said, if I don't have time to make something, it's easy enough to grab those. Almond Breeze, Blue Diamond, the Sun Butters. So beyond those, there's other considerations. We live in a really toxic world compared to what it was 100 years ago. The soils are depleted. They don't have in there what they used to. They don't do the crop rotations that they used to. They only replete soils with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So we're really deficient on, in general, even if we think we're getting, say, a product that would be high in magnesium. It may not be. It should naturally be high in magnesium, but if the soil doesn't have enough in there, then we're not going to get it from our foods. So typically we want to get it first from our foods and then supplement after. That's why they're called supplements. It's just to do as an add-on. So multivitamin and minerals, just to have a basic one overall. There's a lot of different ones out there, and that's where we can help you or the staff can help you. Essential fatty acids, those are your fish, flax, borage, krill, all the different types of oils that we have out there. As I said, your cells are all made up of a fat membrane, and so it's very important to have those. If you're not having them in our diets, we need to supplement in with them. So they help lube the joints, easing PMS and hormonal imbalances, lowering triglycerides, cholesterol, helping with blood pressure, inflammation, vision, mood, learning. Typically, when they were looking at women in the United States, well, they were looking at women all over the world, and they were looking at the amount of DHA that was in the breast milk and linking postpartum along with that. The United States has the lowest amount of the omegas in their blood and in their breast milk. So they were saying, okay, really what we need to do is, because we're not a country that eats a lot of salmon and a lot of fish, you need to make sure that you supplement in with something else. So I know for me, throughout my pregnancy, I took omega-3s when I was breastfeeding too, and then when she was 1, I continued giving her the fish oil right from there. Some of the different ones that I had mentioned, you can get some of the omega-3, 6s, and 9s from your chia seeds too. Those are a nice little snack. Has anybody tried those? Chia seeds? You can put some, I haven't done this in a while, but some almond milk on it and some cinnamon, and if you want to have it a little sweeter, you can put a little maple syrup in with that, and it just makes sort of like a nice little cereal, because I don't have cereal anymore, so it's almost a snack as a cereal. So, and that's a good way, again, to get some of your omegas in. Probiotics, these are all the beneficial bacteria. You pretty much know about probiotics. It's mainstream out there now with people with knowing about Activia and the commercials. But they travel all the way from our sinus cavities through the mouth, the GI tract. These are the good bugs that we need to continue to add back in for our immune system. Different things will challenge them: fluoridated, chlorinated water, pesticides, stress, drugs like antibiotics, prednisone. So if you're having a lot of those in your environment, then we need to be careful not to feed the harmful ones with too much sugar and white flour, because they'll start flourishing the non-beneficial bacteria and fungals. So you can have things like yogurt and kefir and kombucha, sauerkraut, a lot of cultured foods. They saw a benefit way back in the early time-wise, I'm not quite sure where I am. Back in the 1900s, Eli Metchnikov actually looked at the Bulgarian community, the ones that were the peasants compared to the affluent, and he saw that the ones that were peasants lived longer and were healthier. And he noticed also they were eating more cultured food, yogurts and whatnot. So the studies on this has gone way back into the 1900s or possibly before that. So those are definitely things that we need to add in our diet. These, I don't need to really go through all of them, but there's a lot of different strains and forms that it would come in. Again, that would be something that we could go through if you were meeting with me or out on the floor to figure out what would be the best.
I struggle with yogurts for my kids. I'm standing there getting freezing because every yogurt I pick up has 19, 30 grams of sugar. And they don't like the Greek yogurt. Is there any yogurt that...
I know, I struggle with that too, because I get the Stonyfield, the tiny little ones now. They used to have the bigger ones, and I get the tiny little ones, and she'll just drink that down. But she also likes actually the Greek yogurts too. So if they have a little bit of the fruit on the bottom, that's not too bad. They're like 18 grams of sugar, which is not really that bad, unless you buy it, say a yogurt that's a vanilla one, because with the milk, naturally you're going to have a bit of sugar in there because of the lactose. Okay, so then if you pick the berries that you want and have them choose that and they can eat it that way, that's the way you would cut down.
Okay.
And also the cost, actually, like I saw in the food stamp movie, they were saying, oh my gosh, we buy a container of this compared to these little individual ones. So it all depends. Again, if you're putting it in their lunches or whatnot, like now I'm just thinking of it. I buy the individual organic applesauces, and I should probably buy the big jar because I end up opening it up and putting it into a Pyrex container with some cinnamon on top of it anyway. And it would probably be more economical to get the container versus the little one. So, yeah, they're gonna have at least 15-ish grams, even when you're looking at, unless it's plain and really they aren't.
And then they don't want it.
They don't want that, exactly. So just get something like a vanilla one, and then you can add in some fruit that they might like.
Okay,
Thank
you.
Yep, you're welcome. So get the family involved. That's something too you can maybe start doing if and when you have the time. This is something I would love to do. But you can make your own yogurt too. A woman told me about, she did it in a crock pot. She had I forget how she said, there was a starter and some milk or something, and then she just made her own. And it'd be fun for the kids too to do stuff like that. So again, getting them involved, as I learned through Cook Shop when I worked through my internship at SU, I worked with kindergarten through 6th graders, and it was a vegetarian base where we would go in and teach them with rices and fruits and vegetables, and we would have them cut up stuff and beans, and they would have to eat this stuff. They would cut it up and cook it and eat it. And I thought, these kids are never going to eat this stuff. And at the time, I wasn't eating those beans or anything, but I had to sit there, and that's when I started actually getting into eating beans. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're really loving it. And in that food stamp movie, they actually went in and made with kids, it was a spinach. And actually they cut up spinach, that's how it got the green color, and fettuccine. They made the whole thing in the classroom, and the kids loved it. And so they were trying to associate this with, then the next day or two, they brought green fettuccine into the school, and then they said, oh, do you remember in the classroom when we made this? And it wasn't the exact same kind, but then kids were actually eating that. So I thought that was phenomenal how they were doing that. And they were trying to get them into more of that mindset. So when they're involved, and they're involved in a lot of different ways, like with the shopping and selecting the foods. I know my daughter loves to do that. She'll say, Mom, I'm going to help you with picking things out. And I said, that's great. And cooking, she's always wanting to get involved with cooking. We found this great recipe, and we call them little energy balls. It's in the Forks Over Knives recipe book, or the book, Forks Over Knives. And I think it's called School Lunchbox Snacks or something like that. You put almond milk and some, I think it's maple syrup and cocoa powder, and you heat it up. And then I put in a few tablespoons of almond butter or peanut butter or whatever kind of nut butter that you would like. And you melt that down. Then you put in some vanilla, and there was something else. Oh, the vanilla, and then you put in oats, and you can also put in some nuts if you want to, like chopped up walnuts and things like that. And then you just form them into these balls. I mean, the whole thing takes about 5-10 minutes, and she just sits there and adds the stuff in and loves stirring. And she just grabs those as sometimes for breakfast or a snack, and I think that's a great thing to have, and it's something really easy. So easy, and that's how I roll. Healthy, easy, grab and go. That's what I usually like to have. So, and I found another one on this other website. I don't know if I put her website down here. No, I don't think I did. There's a couple other places you can go to. Her name is Annabelle Caramel. It's ANNABELKARMEL.com. And you can click all around. She has a book called Favorite Family Meals, another one, Top 100 Finger Foods. She's in the UK and she has 3 kids. I think they're older now, but she has a lot of great things on her site and tips and whatnot. And I don't know if any of you get, well, I have just off the antenna. I don't have cable at all. So I watch, there's this show called Taste Buds. And you can go to the website tastebuds.tv. And it's these kids that are cooking, and they'll say, okay, today we're gonna make round foods, and they'll find all these different things that they're gonna make out of for round foods. And so they go in with these different chefs, and they figure out how to make it, and they'll come back and make their own concoction. So it's cool. My daughter loves it. She'll say, you gotta go print this recipe off as soon as she watches something. So, and also, you know, be a positive role model for that, because what you choose influences what they choose, and trying new foods together. Also, it's really important with breakfast. A study of over 700 ninth graders found that 19% skipped breakfast. 1 in 3 breakfast dodgers had a significant iron shortage and twice the rate of their breakfast eating peers. Zinc, calcium, and folic acid were much higher among those who ate breakfast, and fat consumption was lower. In other studies with children, eating breakfast has been shown to improve memory, grades, math scores, school attendance, and punctuality. So very important for them to have something protein rich, and I'll go over some of those ideas. So here they are. So they can have a healthy cereal with fruit. Again, it shouldn't be one of those sugar-laden ones. So I typically don't do cereals because I can't find any that really are good that she's going to eat. So usually she'll do those energy balls or a yogurt, or sometimes if I have enough time, I'll cook her up some egg, and she loves it. That I do this egg, and it's a little cast iron frying pan. It's about this big. And so I get a couple eggs and I whip them up. My mother did this. She would add a little water and it would get real fluffy with that, and put a little sea salt, and I would just do that. And she would eat it like that, or I would put it into a little pita pocket and she would just eat it as a little sandwich. So smoothies too, if you have time to do smoothies, they're great. Yogurt, we already mentioned. English muffin with an egg and cheese. Or you could do something non-traditional, cheese stick with some ham if they want something like that, just to go out the door with. Or you could do whole grain crackers or fruit. Or you need to have protein, carb, and fat mixture together, especially protein, to get them out the door. If they're eating a lot of sugar, I mean, I know I've done this for myself. She had a leftover cereal about a year ago that she had grabbed in the store, and I ate it. And then from there, it prompted me to want to have more. So by the time I came in here at 9:30 in the morning, I had had 2 gluten-free waffles, her leftover cereal, and something else. And I was ravenous. I felt like I had not eaten a stitch of food. And that's what carbohydrates and sugar do. They just instantly go in, your body uses them, and then, and it's the same as with fruit. If I have an apple, which is healthy, right? You know, if I have an apple in 20 minutes, I'm hungry again. But if I have the apple with some almond butter or a cheese stick, that usually sustains me for about 4 hours, because it's got the fat and the protein and the carbohydrates. So it slowly releases out of your system, instead of carbs, which just spike up and then crash down.
Is almond butter healthier than peanut butter?
Yeah, it doesn't have the aflatoxins in there, which the peanuts typically do, the molding. And almonds have a little bit better profile as far as the omegas and the heart healthy. So I tend to prefer the almond. So if you do get the peanut butter, try to get the non-hydrogenated, the kind that you have to stir up. It's got the oil on the top.
You have to refrigerate that kind.
You do after, yeah, or keep it really in a cold spot.
Even those have the aflatoxins?
Those would still have it, yeah. So healthy, nutritious snacks, again, you could do a trail mix. They could make up their own. Fresh veggies with some cottage cheese or salad dressing. Turkey and a cheese roll up. A lot of times I'll do avocado, I'll mash it up, and she'll have some blue chips with that. Or we have hummus on hand, and she loves to have hummus with some blue chips. Or a lot of times I'll just roll up, like I said, an organic cheese stick and some kind of a turkey or something, and she'll have that as a quick snack. Veggie pizza, you can make your own. Fruit or veggie kebabs, but you have to have something else along with that that's protein. Others, again, here's a whole slew of other ones. Pumpkin or sunflower seeds, celery sticks with almond butter, snow peas with your hummus, rice cakes with cheese and apple slices, a hard-boiled egg, if kids like that. So, lunch ideas, again, these are pretty basic. You're just mixing, again, protein, carbs, and fat, trying to have good combinations. The soup, make sure the soup has some protein in there, again, because it's not gonna sustain. Dinner ideas, same kind of idea. You want to have some things that they'll like, and you want to have protein, carb, and fat mixtures there. So this would be a potential sample menu. Smoothie in the morning with some fruit and yogurt and flax. Apple with some nut butter. Salads if they like salad for lunch. Pear and raw almonds. Dinner, pasta with some seafood, grated cheese and veggies, and you can have a little bit of dark chocolate, definitely. It's just as long as it's organic and it has maybe at least 75% chocolate, because then it has less sugar in there. Another one, you can have a protein shake. That's another thing. Kids can have things like that on hand where you can, my daughter sipped off of mine and she said, yeah, I kind of like that. She didn't really love it, but so you can do things like that for kids. They can have also a trail mix and strawberries, pizza slice that you made on your own, a salad, a healthy snack bar. Again, a snack for afterwards. Pears and apples out there are so abundant now, so that's great to have those. I've been cutting up a lot of pears for her and having those with some sort of cheese stick or something for a snack. Okay, so I already mentioned this, the good food on a tight budget. That's the EWG.org. Meal planning, buying in bulk, batch cooking and freezing, leftovers. I'm going to talk a little bit on those. Go to the store with a shopping list, coupons ready, things all kind of laid out for you. I know I have done this, and it takes a lot of preparing when you're really trying to set up, trying to have enough things around there. So you want to shop the perimeter mostly, because of course what do they put in the middle? Most of the convenience foods. But again, we have to be realistic. If we're working moms with families and you're running all over the place, you have to be realistic. You have to have some things that are going to be grab and go healthy. That's where I say Amy's Meals products are great, because I would grab a soup or something like one of their lunches, or sometimes I grab the Amy's pesto pizza on her dance nights, because I come home and say, hey, that's what we're having, because I get home at 7:30 and I said, this is what you gotta have real quickly before we get her into bed. I'm not gonna stop at Pizza Hut. And you know what made me mad? The schools, as a reward of after this was kindergarten, they read a certain amount of books each month, and if they met it, they would get this coupon. And it was for Pizza Hut, and they knew all about it, and she was all over getting her little personal pan pizza. And I said, you know, why can't they do this? Even her dance class, what do they give it rewards at the end of the dance class? They have a big candy box. So I used to be able to switch out, and I said, here's one of the organic lollipops instead, and she'd say, okay, now it's, oh, I got this, and I just, at some certain points, you just don't fight it anymore, but I don't buy the stuff around the house. She knows that I won't buy it. So, so vegetables, if they're about to go bad, freeze them, or you can make soups out of them. Use long-lasting veggies around, like potatoes, carrots, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, apples. You keep them in colder places, they'll last a lot longer. You can use frozen vegetables too. That's the next best to fresh versus canned. Okay, so it goes fresh, frozen, and canned. So what do we do with leftovers? So say if you had fish as the main dish, you can use the leftovers in a taco or some wraps or salad for the days after. Dining out, you have to be careful with this. Again, you're not going to know what you're getting when you're dining out. So options, really to look at how the food is being prepared. Baked, broiled, steamed, grilled, poached, roasted are better options versus the others. If you're really trying to watch for yourself or the children as far as weight, skip or minimize the drinks. Also, share a meal. I do that a lot with friends, go out and share a meal, and then if there's a dessert, we share a little tiny dessert if you want to have something. And skipping the appetizers, the bread basket. Why do they have to put that bread basket down? I would tell them, just don't put it down. Don't even bring it here. Some of them listen, others they don't. Help the kids to be mindful eating. Try not to eat while performing other activities like driving, TV, computer. Keep the vegetables fresh in your, keep fresh vegetables in your refrigerator. So if you pick anything in the fridge, try the vegetables. So you can leave them cut up fruits and vegetables. My daughter has a certain drawer that's her drawer, and she knows she goes to. That's where she can get her different things out of there. She also has a certain cupboard that she knows she can get certain stuff out for snacks. Also, don't forget water. A lot of times, I had a client that told me about how her son had constant headaches and they couldn't figure out what it was. And what was it? It ended up being dehydration. We really forget the thirst mechanism, and I know I'm one of those. I am challenged at getting the required amount of water. But it is really crucial because it does help prevent muscle joint pain, bloating, constipation. Also helps maintain healthy skin turgor too. And it detoxifies. It helps us detoxify all the time. So tips for making a change. Set reasonable goals. Don't shoot for the moon. Break it down into small little things. Prioritize what must be done versus what might be nice to get it done. Set milestones, and you can reward yourself and check off those milestones at the end. So like I said, start out small. If you just want to start with some buying local, or if you say, all right, I'm going to start looking at some labels more, or I'm going to start really being aware of gluten, or whatever it may be, and then just work your way into it. Because me, you know, I can talk about this, and I've been doing it though for a good 13 years. So it's not like anything I just jumped right into. And mine was thwarted, and the reason why I started working here too and went back to grad school was because I was hospitalized with some different health issues, and it started getting me on the path of thinking, oh, I've really got to look at what's going on, and I'm putting in me and on me and my environment and all that. So it started slowly and then just continued to ramp from there. So I know I've thrown a lot at you, but believe me, you don't have to do all this like tomorrow. You start reading about it, looking into it, picking at different things that you want to really incorporate more into your life, and be realistic too. Like I said, I still grab the pizza on that Wednesday night because I know that I'm not going to stop at the McDonald's or any of those other places. So for me, a healthier fast food would be something like an Amy's Pizza versus having something eating out. So let's try to live life in a way that improves our health and for our kids as well. So I already gave you these. You have the handout, and if you don't, I have them up here. These are just some of the nourishing. Let me back it up here. So the food pyramid here. This one is one that basically you can go to and find some different information and whatnot. John Gordon is a guy, he's the energy guy, but he has this whole 7-day healthy and positive kid plan. It's a really good plan to look at. EWG, that's the Environmental Working Group that I told you about, that also has that site for the shopping guide. Non-GMO project we talked about. Eat Wild was the local stuff. Grindstone is the local farm. And these are just some others. This is a vegetarian, vrg.org. And Nourishing Meals is a great one, which is gluten-free, and I think it's dairy-free, and they have all sorts of different recipes and recipe books that you can go online. These are all gluten-free ones here. And these are just some books that I referenced here. And this is my information, and thank you for attending.